So in this part, we're going to talk a little bit about some tactics for a red grouper, a little bit more about how to set up for them, the tackle we use, the bait we use, the approaches we use, the techniques we use, all to make you more successful at catching red grouper. So for red grouper bait, my favorite bait for red grouper is typically, we get these big squid wings and we'll cut those squid wings into strips. Strips for the red grouper work very well. Typically about a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch wide strip, about 6 to about 12 inches, works very, very well to cover a larger area because the red grouper, they love octopus. So the octopus, when you cut the squid strips into what seems like octopus tentacles, it works very well and it'll stay on the hook well, and squid is much more readily available than octopus. Occasionally, certain times of the year, you can catch octopus while you're out here fishing. And when you do see the octopus start coming up, try to swing them in the boat and you can cut those tentacles off the octopus and they work very well for bait. Some people like eating octopus, so what we'll do is we'll cut a tentacle or two off the octopus and let them take it home to eat it. If no one on board wants to eat it, then we'll cut all the tentacles off the octopus and use it for bait. You can even use the head of the octopus for bait as well. But when octopus isn't readily available, those squid strips work very well for red grouper. Occasionally, like right now, we're having trouble finding those squid strips, so we're stuck using the whole squid. And whole squid do work for red grouper. I'll show you what I mean. The problem with the whole squid, unlike the squid strips, is this whole squid is much easier for the fish to tear apart. So this will come off the hook a lot easier than that squid strip, because typically you're hooking the hook through the beak of the squid up here where it's a little bit more solid and they have a little bit of cartilage running up through the beak. And that cartilage, when you hook your hook through there, is going to help you hold that squid on the hook. However, it will come off the hook a lot easier than some of those squid strips. So the whole squid, some people think it's a much superior bait for red grouper, but in my opinion, I'd much rather be using a squid strip from one of those big wings if they were able to be brought out here. Certain times of the year, you just can't get those squid wings, so you have to use the whole squid. But you can also use live pinfish, live pigfish. We catch a lot of big red grouper on cut bait too. You can catch some fish out here like the lizard fish, some of the spot tails, and you can cut those baits up and use them cut for the red grouper. Especially in the hot summer months, a cut dead bait works very well for red grouper. Some people bring out Boston mackerel, some cut mullet, any type of fillet or chunk of fish works very well for the red grouper as well. Because remember, they're scavengers. They're out here scavenging for bait. Anything that has a good amount of oil and stink in the water is going to work well for red grouper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the tail of this bait. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the head of the bait. I'm going to trim the belly a little bit, open up that belly cavity. So now all the blood and guts are able to ooze out of there real simply. And that's going to give me a nice chunk of bait. Where I've got no head, no tail. All I've got left with is some good meat, and the belly cavity's open, so I've got lots of oil and good stuff spilling out into the water. This is a real good approach to use for the mangrove snapper. It works very well for the red grouper as well, gag grouper. A little bit of everything will take this big old chunk of meat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a double snell rig into this. That way, wherever that fish bites, he's going to get a hook in his mouth, and I'll show you how to hook that. So your first hook or your bottom hook always goes in the bait first, and you're going to put that towards the thicker end of the bait. I'm going to put it perpendicular to the silver and blue line. That silver and blue line denotes the backbone of the bait. I'm going to pull that all the way through the other side of the bait and then turn the hook parallel to the silver and blue line, which again denotes the backbone. Then the second hook is going to go about 1/4 inch up from the top eye of that second hook, again perpendicular to the silver and blue line. Once I'm through to the other side, I'll turn it parallel. So now I've got a really nice straight hanging piece of bait. Pretty much wherever that fish grabs, he's going to get a hook in his mouth. And you'll notice the skinny end of that bait is up towards my lead. So as it drops to bottom, it's going to drop to bottom like this. Very hydrodynamically. It's not going to spin at all, and I'm going to be able to get to the bottom quickly without causing a tangle. This double snell rig not only works well for some of the snapper species, but I also use it primarily for red grouper as well, especially when I'm using that squid strip. This double snell rig allows you to put 2 hooks into that squid strip. So when that squid is drifting by and that red grouper comes up and nails it, you're gonna have a greater chance of having a hook in that fish's mouth. And with the squid strips, you can kind of separate these hooks a little bit and leave a little bit more of a gap between the hooks. That way, in that 6-inch piece of squid, you're gonna have a hook in the middle and then a hook at one end. And that works really well for when you're drifting through an area for the red grouper. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this down. Since we're fishing one of those bait shows, I've switched to a little bit lighter tackle setup. This is gonna be a 2-speed Daiwa Saltiga. This thing's got about 35 pounds of drag to it, maybe closer to 40, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's gonna enable me to have 2 speeds. So I'm gonna leave it in high gear ratio or high speed mode. That way I can set the hook quickly and easily on any quick biting snapper species or porgies or triggerfish. But I also, with the click of a button, am able to switch into low gear. And it's a lot like your vehicles. You downshift your truck to get up a hill or tow your boat up the ramp. It's the same idea here. I hit a little button and all of a sudden I'm in low gear mode and I can get that big fish up off the bottom quickly. All these 2-speed reels are lever drags. So I'm gonna set the strike mode to a snapper drag. And that way when I'm fishing, I'm right in strike mode and 2-speed or high speed mode. And if I was to get that big fish on there, I just click the button, go down into low gear and move this lever forward a little bit. And all of a sudden I'm ready to fish for one of those bigger fish and catch one of those big guys. Now right off the bat, I'm already getting bites. So I'm not gonna lift my rod tip up and adjust it. I'm just gonna button down, make sure he's got plenty of slack and wait for that fish to bite. No matter what kind of bait I'm using, especially the dead bait, I like to keep my thumb and forefinger on the line right here. It gives you a much better feel for the bait on the bottom. You get to a point where you can feel the bottom, feel your bait on the line, and in a party boat setting, when you have other people around you, you can feel when other lines are starting to touch your main line, when other lines cross you up, when other lines get tangled with you and start pulling your bait off the bottom. And that feel all comes from just practice, repetition, and a sensitive rod helps a lot. But even with the big old broomstick, if you keep your thumb and forefinger on the line in front of the reel, it can help kind of cheat a little bit and get a little bit more sensitivity as to what's happening on the bottom, especially in the summertime with the red grouper. As the water gets hotter, they get a little bit more lethargic and they won't come up and smash the bait. They'll just kind of come up and sit on top of the bait. And sometimes you even have to like lift your rod tip a little bit before they'll actually take the bait and run with it. So making sure you're keeping your thumb and forefinger on the line and feeling that bait really helps you be a little bit more successful on the water for sure. Typically, red grouper are going to be hanging out over the flat, hard bottom, especially the little potholes or the Swiss cheese bottom or the cracks in the limestone bottom we have out here in the Gulf of Mexico. So the red grouper are going to move over that large area of hard rock bottom, and they're more of foragers. They're not going to ambush their prey. Like the gags are going to hide in their hole, hide in the rock, hide in the leg, and ambush that live bait or that prey moving by. Whereas the red grouper are going to be more scavengers. They're going to be over a larger area, moving around, hunting for crustaceans, hunting for small shrimp. Red grouper are kind of more of a forager. So because of that, the red grouper habitat's a little different. Those potholes give them a large area to move around. Those cracks, they can swim up and down the crack looking for bait, looking for crabs, looking for shrimp. And then also the red grouper will move on and off the hard bottom over patchy sands of hard bottom. So if you got a patch of hard bottom here, you got a patch of hard bottom here with a little bit of sand in between it, a lot of times you can find red grouper migrating between the two patches. So drifting works really well for the red grouper for that reason. We're going to talk about how to position a boat over the spot. We're going to talk about how to use your machines properly, how to read your machines. We're going to talk about the tackle you need to be successful for gag grouper, red grouper, black grouper, and scamp grouper, and more. And we're going to talk about everything you need to know about how to become a grouper master. And if you have any questions, leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. And hopefully we can bring you exactly what you're looking for.